ELA friends. Got a great one for us today. The curious case of @username. Here's the impetus behind this. So, not too long ago, I got sucked into the scroll as I often do, and I was like, geez, wait a minute. Like, this is such an odd brainchild. I was like, isn't what I'm doing what I ask my kids to do when they annotate? Because there I am in the scroll looking at all these old high school kids that I used to go to high school with, and I'm annotating them. In a sense, I'm taking their karma. I'm just looking at their post and I'm piecing together their stories. So that was kind of the drive behind this. So what I've done is created 4 fake profiles, social media profiles. I go over how to annotate, but then I morph it into a full-length essay where the annotations actually take bloom. So to do this, I'm thinking about doing it with my AP Lang students next year and my AP Lit. So I'm going to model how to do a rhetorical analysis and a literary analysis. And what I'll do is use the heuristics that I introduced my students to early in the year. So for rhetorical analysis, we'll declare the thesis. For literary analysis, we'll invert the thesis. And then, as always, the body paragraphs are going to be written syllogistically. So it's kind of a long writing workshop. So what I'm going to do is just give a cursory overview, and I'll probably make a second video going over the essays a little further. So this is just going to be an explainer video of how I set up the activity. So hope you really enjoy this one and your kids have a hoot and a blast with it. All right, my ELA friend. So here's the rationale behind this. I'll unpack it just a little bit more. So too often students view annotation as little more than highlighting text, circling literary devices, or completing a compliance-based task. In reality, effective annotation requires readers to notice details, make inferences, identify patterns, and construct meaning from evidence. The challenge is that many students struggle to transfer these skills to literature or rhetoric because they have never practiced them in a context that feels authentic. This activity bridges that gap by placing students in a familiar environment. Social media. Through the examination of fictional Instagram profiles, students will engage in the same analytical thinking required of literary scholars. They will move beyond simple observations and instead ask what individual details reveal about a person's values, motivations, relationships, struggles, and identity. By annotating posts, captions, images, and recurring patterns, even discrepancies, I should have added that, inconsistencies, ironies. Students will discover that reading a social media profile is not fundamentally different from reading a poem, short story, novel, or rhetorical piece. In both cases, meaning must be constructed from clues scattered throughout the text. The ultimate goal is for students to recognize that annotation is not an act of marking a page, it is an act of thinking, right? So we'll look at the 4 profiles in just a little bit, and I'll show you how to annotate. But that's kind of the setup. Here's the activity overview. Students will be introduced to 4 fictional social media users, each represented by a profile containing 4 posts. As they examine each profile, students will assume the role of digital detectives tasked with piecing together the story of the account holder. For each post, students will annotate directly on the profile, focusing on what the evidence reveals about the individual. Students should move beyond literal observations and instead make inferential comments that explain significance. So I don't want them to do this. The user works at a restaurant. Instead, the repeated references to long shifts suggest this individual carries significant responsibilities outside of school. So something along those lines. So let's jump in and take a look at the profiles. So the first one, I have this guy and his username is Meat Fuel Strength. And it says, meat is not murder, it's muscle mass, right? And you can see his shirt, meat fuels legends, meat builds beast. He's jacked just absolutely to the stacks here. And so that's the first one. And we would break that down together. Here's number 2. Arnold ain't got nothing on me, a reference to Arnold Schwarzenegger. So you got your illusion in there. Meat power dominate. Meat fuels legends. All right. So number 3, total shift here. We got, I wish I could rescue them all. And he's nestling 4 kitty cats, right? Compassion is strength. So we got these juxtapositions in here, these contradictions. And this is what we do with literature and rhetoric all the time. Note the last one. Taking grandma to the grocery store, 0 emissions, and they're outside of a fresh market, kind of like a Whole Foods or something like that. And between the 4 of them, they got to note those ironies, those contradictions, those tensions, those similarities, right? And get cooking with the rhetorical and the literary elements, right? So even his wristband, his shirt, the eco mode, grandma smiling at him smiling and showing that tender side, that compassionate side. So that's profile number 1. Let's take a look at some annotations here. So this would be like a surface level annotation paragraph. The creator shows himself driving an electric vehicle with his grandmother. The caption says, taking grandma to the grocery store, 0 emissions. This demonstrates that he cares about both his family and the environment. The hashtags support the idea that electric vehicles are beneficial because they reduce pollution. Overall, the post encourages people to consider environmentally friendly transportation while spending time with loved ones. So very early in the year, I want to mark the stark distinction between plot analysis and literary analysis and rhetorical analysis. They're 2 totally different things. And this is very plot summative. So lacks the analytical qualities that I'm looking for. So let me model like an AP stature annotation. Although the image initially appears to be a simple family outing, the creator carefully constructs a multidimensional identity that complicates traditional stereotypes associated with hypermasculinity. The exaggerated musculature, gym attire, and username Meat Fuel Strength establish him as a stereotypical meathead, yet these visual cues are juxtaposed against symbols of tenderness and social responsibility. Those terms, those devices, those techniques are coming into play here. We got commentary, we have analysis. By placing his grandmother in the passenger seat and foregrounding an environmentally conscious activity, the creator broadens the definition of strength beyond physical dominance. The image implicitly argues that genuine masculinity encompasses compassion, familial devotion, and civic responsibility. Furthermore, the grandmother functions as an emotional appeal, inviting viewers to associate environmental stewardship with care for future generations. Rather than merely documenting an errand, the post strategically rebrands what strength looks like in contemporary culture. The creator ultimately crafts a persona that is simultaneously powerful, nurturing, and socially conscious. That's cooking in the peanut sauce right there, right? That's what the annotations should build in the end. So I'm digging that. Here's profile number 2. We have Earthy Soul 111, manifesting my best self. Good vibes, high tides, open minds, right? And, hashtags like good vibes only. So this tranquil, serene, kind of woo, hippie-esque woman. The next one, goat yoga, right? Manifesting my best self, good vibes only, raise your frequency, gratitude, spiritual journey, mindful soul, good vibes, strong heart, happy soul, breathe, stretch, believe, are all part of this. So the next one begins to show the contradictions, some of the irony, the juxtapositions, and she says, I must have made the universe angry as the firemen are getting the cat out of the tree, right? And she's got her crystals and her candles and all that stuff, her peace earrings. So it's similar to the first one. And then the last one says, that's what you get for cheating on me, Bobby, as she's burning his varsity leather jacket, right? So great contrast, great juxtapositions. this one would be a field day to analyze. Number 3, book smart Bree. Someone's chalking up the victories to be valedictorian as she's honored at the National Honor Society, right? Future doctor, maybe president, discipline, focus, grit, success. All of her AP books, eat, sleep, study, repeat on the coffee mug, 4.0, no excuses, only answers, right? Number 2, no prom for this girl. Harvard awaits, right? Future Harvard grad, Ivy League loading, 99%. Discipline today, success tomorrow. 80% is the new 100%, right? So girl is skipping prom. You got the whiteboard behind her. So lots to annotate here. Number 3, Mr. Kuhn must hate me. Oh my God, this destroys my GPA. As she got a B plus and is crying hysterical, and motivation is crossed out in the background above her shoulder there. Not an option. Right. Great stuff here. So number 4, I've never missed a day of school before in my life, as she's got a cold, right? No school, no, hydrate, and high motivation. So all of those have good balance between them. Here's number 4. Revolutionary Rose, free healthcare for all, no justice without health, justice. Healthcare is a human right, right? And she says people over profit with her pin. So good stuff. It's a lie. You can actually choose whose family. And number 3, I'm 2 weeks away from graduating college and I have no idea what I want out of life. And her notepad and the coffee mug, the computer, all the background posters are all part of the annotation. And then getting back to basics with Harry Potter, right, is the last one. So what I did for mine is I wrote the essay with the bulky weightlifting guy, and the students can choose the other 3 to base their essays on. So the question becomes, how do I transform this into an essay? Here's the AP Lang rhetorical analysis prompt. A social media profile is rarely a random collection of posts. Through images, captions, symbols, diction, tone, and carefully curated experiences, users construct a public identity designed to influence how audience perceive them. Choose one of the provided social media profiles. Then, in a well-developed essay, analyze how the profile's creator strategically crafts a persona for a specific audience. In your analysis, examine the rhetorical choices that contribute to the construction of this identity and evaluate how effectively those choices achieve the creator's apparent purpose. You may consider such elements as visual imagery, repetition, diction, symbolism, tone, audience appeals, omissions, patterns among posts, and the relationship between individual posts and the profile as a whole. Avoid treating each post as an isolated artifact. Strong essays will analyze the profile holistically, exploring how meaning emerges through the interaction of multiple posts and the cumulative effect of recurring patterns. Consider not only what the profile creator chooses to showcase, but also what they choose to omit. Ultimately, your goal is to explain how the profile functions as a carefully constructed rhetorical argument about identity, right? So those that are familiar with my work know that I have a prompt hack, kind of like a cheat code. So in this one, we're going to do a declarative thesis. So you're going to riff 3 sentences on the construction of meaning and 1 sentence on the author's intent. And as always, I model it 3 times for you. And again, if there's need, if teachers want me to do this, I'll make writing workshops for this. So you're done with the intros. The question becomes, how do I construct the body paragraphs? And again, as always, we always employ the syllogistic method. So I take you through how to do the first premises a couple of times. Then I show you how to do the second premise and the conclusion a couple of times as well. And, the question becomes, what do I do next? You always go syllogistically in your body paragraphs. You bust out a syllogistic body paragraph. So let's take a look at the prompt for AP Literature. So social media as poetry. Poets often create meaning through recurring images, symbols, contrast, shifts in tones, and carefully selected details. While social media profiles are not traditionally considered literary texts, they frequently construct narratives and themes through many of the same techniques. Choose one of the provided social media profiles and read it as if it were a poem. Then, in a well developed essay, analyze how the profile's creator develops a complex theme through the interaction of individual posts. In your response, examine how recurring patterns, motifs, symbols, contrast, tensions, and shifts contribute to a deeper understanding of the character behind the account. Avoid simply summarizing individual posts. Instead, consider how the profile functions as a unified literary work whose parts combine to create meaning. Strong essays will explore how seemingly unrelated details work together to reveal a larger truth about identity, belonging, ambition, relationships, happiness, success, and loneliness, or another significant theme. In your analysis, you may discuss literary elements such as imagery, symbolism, juxtaposition, motif, tone, characterization, irony, structure. However, your primary focus should remain on how these elements contribute to the profile's overall thematic meaning. So in this one, we actually invert the thesis. And as always, I walk you through that 3 times. All right, so declarative and inverted are 2 separate things. Body paragraphs, you guessed it, we go syllogistically, and I'm following the same pattern here. I do the first premise twice and the second premise and conclusion twice. And then for good measure, I give my students some stems to write conclusions, and those are in my other videos as well if you want to take a look. So if you want me to make the writing workshops for rhetorical analysis and literary analysis, if there's a demand for it, I absolutely will. But you can backtrack and go in my YouTube channel and see what those heuristics are all about. So if you have any questions, comments, just want to reach out, teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com is a good address. Hope you enjoy this one. So I'm going to begin my year with this. I think I'll get a lot of bang for my buck out of it and high engagement, and I'll solidify some good lessons with annotation and commentary and all that good stuff. So take care for now, be well, and I'll be back later on.